was saying. But I'd like to thank all of you for being here in honor of Pete. I want to give my love to Pete's family watching and thank them for sending their amazing son who has touched so many hearts here at Herkimer. Pete had an unbelievable personality and a heart of gold. Just real briefly on soccer, I can tell you that I've never coached a player who's dominated both offensively and defensively in my 16 years of coaching. He was part of 13 shutouts. He was our leading goal scorer as a central back with 15 goals. He had 3 game-winning goals in a national tournament, including the national championship game. Won every award that you could possibly win as a player, including All-Region, All-American, National Tournament MVP, and National Player of the Year. I mean, there's no more that you could possibly win. He did everything that he could here. I'm learning each hour and day how many lives that Pete has touched. Get on Facebook and Twitter, and it's amazing to read all the beautiful things that have said about Pete. You can tell by some of the pictures and videos that he has out there with friends, whether they're in Scotland or they're in Herkimer, that he truly enjoyed life. And if you want to get a smile, I'm telling you, look at some of those pictures. You know, with Pete, I saw one with no shirt on, I think a tie wrapped around his head, and I don't know if his chest was all oiled up or he was sweating. But there's some really funny videos and pictures out there, and he really did enjoy life. I cannot tell you how many texts, emails, Facebook inboxes, phone messages that I've received all over the country and world on Pete. So many that I honestly cannot keep up. I'm truly amazed to hear how much Pete impacted all of their lives. Just a brief couple of stories with some of the Adirondack players. That we've had some heated battles over 2 years, and down at the All-American Convention, 2 of their players were down there, so they got a chance to spend some time with, you know, Tristan and Pete. And after the 2 days, it was, you know, he made them all feel so welcome that they honestly were like brothers just after 2 days. And I got a great email from them today, and I'm not even sure if they're here, but they were asking if it was okay that they showed up to this. And we're talking after 2 days just spent with Pete. He just touched people's lives only after a couple of days. Emails that you wouldn't normally get. Opposing coaches. Coach Gould from Mohawk Valley Soccer had some great comments in the newspaper today about Pete. The Suffolk coach, who we beat in the national championship, sent a really nice email about Pete today. The Bunker Hill coach, and I'm quoting here, said he and his players respected Pete because he played hard, was a competitor, but also made them laugh in the heat of the moment. And that's true. You know, he would trash talk to them, and the reason why they were laughing is because they had no idea what he was saying to them. But you knew he was angry at them because of the tone of his voice and the look on his face. Soccer officials that I've gotten text messages from said what a gentleman he was before, during, and after the game. Thank God that they didn't hear what he was saying about him in the locker room afterwards. Campers' parents, emails to me. He did summer camps, 2 weeks of summer camps with me this summer. And parents had emailed when they heard of his passing of how much their kids loved him. And it was always fun to watch him in the drills, and I'd give him his own station. And it was fun to watch him tell the kids. He would explain the drills, and it would take him 10 times before those kids would actually do what he was asking to them. But basically, the 10 times was he'd go, okay, you get over there, and this is what I want you to do. Okay, but he tried to explain it 10 times, and these kids had no idea what he was saying, but they loved his accent. I've been asked by the press over the last couple of days about funny stories with Pete, and I've thought about it for the last couple of days, and I came to the conclusion that every day was funny with Pete. You know, whether we were warming up in practice, or we're in practice, or after the games, or on road trips, every day was a good time with Pete. When Pete first arrived on campus, it took him a month to figure out that nobody could understand what he was saying, you know, because of his accent. And I thought that was hilarious with Jermaine back here to think of that it was his English that was improper and not Pete's. But the funny thing with Pete was you spend enough time with him, and it was funny to watch him around people that met him for the first time, because they all had the same reaction. There was two reactions, and we've all done this with Pete. The first reaction was to nod their head and pretend that they knew what he was saying. Okay, and then the second one was they would move closer and closer to him. And I don't care how close that you got to Pete McAvoy, you were not going to understand what he was going to say to you. You know, and you got to sit there, and the player, we would sit there and watch him do that. You know, we had a lot of fun with that. I used to love the van rides when he would sit next to me in the front seat and say something. Okay, and he'd say something to me, and I'd say, what? And I'd say something, he'd say something, I'd say, what? He'd say something again, I'd say, what? He said, oh, forget it. You know, like it was my fault. I said, it's not my fault, Pete. Speak up and speak clearer and slower, please. I used to love watching him put his sub-orders in. When we, after our away trips, he'd go up, and I would purposely just sit there and watch him tell the person, and the person would sit there with their little menu or whatever, and they'd have to say their number and what sub you wanted. And he'd say his number, and they'd look at him, and they'd have to look down. Thank God his number was on his jersey. So he said his number, they didn't know, they'd look down, and they'd put his number down. And then he'd say, okay, what sub would you like? And he would say the sub order, and they would look at him. And they would say the sub order again, they would look at him. So either somebody had to help him out, or he would just say it a little bit slower. And it was funny, one of the days he said a sub order and they didn't understand what he was saying. He ordered a turkey sub, and he ended up with a meatball sub with the wrong number on it. He was a real big ball buster, and we all know that about Pete. And I had to get him. I don't know if it was this year or last year, because you know he was a sweet talker. He would get his way out of Breakfast Club somehow with that smile or some excuse that he would come up with. And one day I said, all right, we had practice up on the practice field, and Officer Treadwell came over, and the guys were warming up 50 yards away, and I said, you know what, Treadwell, do me a favor, just work with me on this. I want to get Pete. And he said, okay. So I walk up to the practice field and I say, McAvoy, get over here right now. And he's walking towards me, and he's scared to death. He sees campus safety behind me. He sees I'm mad. I said, I don't know what you did last night, but this is on you, and you're going to have to deal with this. And he walks up, and he's scared. He walks down the hill a little bit, and he gets to Officer Treadwell. Officer Treadwell says, have a nice day, Pete. And he drives away. Now, Pete, who's the biggest ball buster in the world, had to walk 50 yards towards 45 guys who were laughing their asses off at him. I was so happy on that day. I want to finish up by saying thank you, Pete, for making me a better husband, father, son, brother, coach, friend. You're truly a blessing to Anastasia, Natalia, Pito, myself. Thank you for being the best captain that I've ever coached. I truly feel honored to have been in your life for 2 amazing seasons. I love you, and I know you're watching down on us. Thank you for touching so many hearts, and we love you. I spoke to Pete's dad this morning. I'm going to finish on our conversation, and he emailed me about a half hour before that I came up here. And he wrote, Pepe, if it would be helpful if you could read the words of Pete's favorite soccer song, You'll Never Walk Alone. And it goes as this: when you walk through the storm, hold your head high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm, there's a golden sky and the sweet silver song of the lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, through your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone. And he says, this is from Mr. McAvoy. I would only ask you to say that Pete loved and lived the idea of Herc family and the wider concept of Herc Nation. to include those who had left the college but continued to identify with it. I would like to thank all the student colleagues